Yo, what's good? Man, it's finally like winter now, over here in LA. And it's funny because I always have these conversations with people that, are not from here, like they may be from the East Coast or the Midwest. And they always kind of laugh when, you be like, oh, it's cold, but it's usually like right before fall. And you say something like, oh, it's cold. And then they be like, cold? Like, this ain't cold. I'm like, what are you talking about? They like, yeah, where I'm from, man, this is summer weather, just to kind of insinuate, that you may be soft or whatever when it comes to the cold. And I just always think that's funny, but, we all laced up and, it's officially the cold season. But yeah, this video is about, it's just like a little rant, man, on some rare collectibles that I used to own as a kid. A lot of you guys probably heard of Pokemon cards, man. See, I grew up, I am an 80s baby, but I necessarily I grew up throughout the 90s, like the mid 90s to the early 2000s. That was like my actual like early childhood. And throughout that time, it was a very interesting period of technology, right? You had the crossover from CD players to MP3 players. And then, MP3 players, birthed the whole, Apple iPod era and things like that. You know what I'm saying? And within that era, you had a large, sector of kids that collected, animation type products, right? You had, things that I mentioned like Pokemon. You had things like what they call Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh. It's all types of things. It was birthed in those eras. You know what I'm saying? And I wasn't a part of no Yu-Gi-Oh. I wasn't a part of no Magic the Gatherings. I wasn't a part of. And I think those came a little bit later, but Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon was like, I think that was like the mainstream of the era I grew up in. And, if you had something of that to symbolize at the time, kids really recognized it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember in school, Dragon Ball Z was, it was special by art, because a lot of people respected through the cartoon, through the program. Everybody knew Goku and the character. That's a character name within the show. And and then I knew people that could draw, the Dragon Ball Z characters almost comparable to the actual animation on TV. And you used to be like, man, that shit is crazy, man. Like, you was dope. You know what I'm saying? And then you have your pictures and stuff like that, and something to symbolize, you know what I'm saying? But prior to that, I got into Pokemon cards, man. I was just like, I was a little collector, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wanted to have everything of the Pokemon era. And at the time, it seemed like, it was a thing where it was a cross between, being popular and being a nerd. But at the time, I was still very young. But I had collected a lot of cards through, gifts, birthdays, school, graduation, like those were like gifts, you know what I'm saying? And also, I also went out to, buy them as well. Those little booster packs that you guys see nowadays, people are ripping open and shit like that. Before that, all those antics and everything was created. Like, I was like an original collector. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't, doing this shit, so I can, kind of like finesse people in the, dealing with me on a personal level, but more so wanting to just enjoy my collection and what I was putting together. So I had one of those little Pokemon cases, right? It was a blue case. It had a little character on there named Charmander, and it was right in the middle of the book. So if you guys go on Google, you can look it up. It was it was a blue portfolio book, full of the little clear cases that you stack the cards in. And then I just found out that they had a red one, but there's only 2 of those notebooks, I guess. I've never seen the red one growing up. I only seen the blue one. And I had collected, I believe, damn near every single original Pokemon at that time, and I put it inside of my blue folder. A lot of them I had duplicate copies of those original Pokemon. I believe I had a Charizard. I know I had many other ones, the Pikachu and all that shit. And as you know now, they're all highly valuables. I kept my shit in pristine shape. And the what I bring to you today is because I feel like I was silently robbed, because it was an incident where, my grandmother had passed away at a specific time. And with that being said, it was a lot of things that was, transpiring at that time. But at the same time, I had people, some family that hired, I don't know what they were doing, but they got some movers to come and move my grandmother's stuff from one location to another location. And it's one of those things, like when you think of like the ancient Egyptians and, the artifacts and stuff like that, like, who moved it? Why did you move it? Where is it now? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not comparing my Pokemon collection to, obviously the ancient, ancestors and nothing like that. But I'm just giving an example, because it's very valuable. And, as a kid, that's nostalgia. You know what I'm saying? Like I had a portfolio about this thick, and it had like a button clip onto the notebook. Like it could barely close. That's how much Pokemon cards that I had inside that casing. And I remember putting that casing with my grandmother inside of one of her hall closets. Your grandparents always had a hall closet, right, full of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I remember putting that in there, for safekeeping, because I was always in and out, doing what I do. And I remember vividly that it was with her in that closet. You know what I'm saying? And whatever transpired between the time that, the family that was moving at the time, somebody came across it, and I don't know who it was. And I'm still, to this day, I keep asking, because my mother, she was connected to the items that my grandmother had that, was moved, stuff like that. Then I had some other family members. And then I had some in-laws that I believe was involved that live outside of California in another state. And I still, like I said, to this day, I don't know where that great book of Pokemon cards went, right? And it's very disturbing to know that no one would highlight, something like that, because it was one of those things where they knew I was the last of the youngest kids growing up with my grandmother. And then all of the great grandchildren or the grandchildren was never living with her. So if anybody came across that casing with those Pokemon cards, they knew that had to be mine, because it wouldn't have been my grandmother's. So I still to this day try to figure out, who's seen it, and, who may have put it wherever the location, because wherever the location is, if you still had it, I don't know. I would go and fly to go get that, because the value of that book is, it doesn't matter. The value of the book, is going to be high in price, and it belongs to me. And at the same time, that shit, man, that shit could retire the average person, what I had in there. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, it was not just the value of the book, but it was nostalgic, because I collected every single type of card that there was, between holographics and all the original stuff that you guys see today, motherfuckers ripping open and, screaming and holding their heads and shit. Like, look, I had all that shit. I was doing all that shit before, anybody was, fake doing it now. You know what I'm saying? So I figured that, I was like, all right, well, I want to start a new collection, and I want to start it with my, with my son, but still, that's an empty piece in me that's missing, that I don't have, that I could also pass over to my son. You know what I'm saying? So this is just a rant, man. Like, because I was like, shit, man, that's kind of fucked up. Like, if somebody has something so valuable, and somebody comes across something and they just don't say shit about it, maybe they, in their mind, they know a little bit of something, but at the same time, they just, like, don't give a fuck, and they like, all right, well, I'm just gonna keep it, I'm gonna hold on to this shit. It's like, well, nigga, it didn't belong to you. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, that's something that, somebody would fight for. That's just like, a case of Rolexes. That's like your retirement fund. Someone comes into your, your retirement fund, that you have on your job, and at the end, when you retire, when you're 89 years old and you got to get your retirement check, you know what I'm saying? Somebody come and just take that shit from you. Like, that's how it is. You had that since the beginning. You know what I mean? So it's just a rant, man. Just know I was a part of that era, man. Like, before all of this bullshit. I'm not saying that this newer era is like bullshit, but I was a part of an era that was special in being the originals, what they call the first edition Pokemon cards. You know what I'm saying? And that shit was kind of taken away from me, man, when whoever stole it from me. Like I said, I feel like I was silently robbed. And hopefully, maybe one day I'll get it back. Who knows? But until then, that's all I got for you guys, man. Appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me. And new subscribers, appreciate you. Existing subscribers, keep doing you, keep being you. And remember, the truth is always in session. Peace.